Welcome to Industrial Marketing Live. I'm Erin Burish, a strategist here at the industrial marketing agency Gorilla 76 and one of your IML hosts today. For everyone that's here live, this is a very exciting day. It's a huge milestone, episode 50 of IML.
50.
Thank you. Thank you, Brendan.
Yeah.
And our topic today Our topic today is a really good one. We have Jon Franko in the house, and we're talking about culture. So one of the biggest challenges that manufacturing companies face, we're all well aware of, is labor, both finding new labor, retaining the great workforce that you have. And while, a lot of things go into that challenge and solving it, marketing can't do it alone, but it is something we can influence. And it's also something that kind of influences our work as well. So today we're going to be talking about building a strong culture, how that can kind of become your North Star internally and externally. And we have some very qualified people here to talk about that. So Jon Franko is a co-founder of Gorilla 76 and our very own culture building champion. So I'll kind of hand it over to him to introduce himself and kind of talk about why culture matters to him.
Well, I'm excited to be here. A lot of pressure. I really don't get nervous very often, but I am nervous today because I'm seeing all these people that I look up to and I'm connected with on LinkedIn. And here we are talking about something that's really near and dear to kind of my role and just my life in general and my philosophy, I think. But yeah, as Erin said, I'm one of the co-founders of Gorilla. We're actually, let's see here, May of 2008 is when Joe and I took this business full time. So we just had the 15th anniversary there, but July of 2006 is actually when we started full time. So 17 years doing this. And I think probably in the first 10 years, we really didn't know what we were doing from a culture standpoint. I think we thought we had some ideas, and like anything else, we've learned from our missteps. And I think what I have seen since is once we've started to get it, what I think is right, and what the numbers tell us is right, the business side of things have kind of followed that same trajectory. We're doing well, landing new business, retention rates are going up. So as we all know, it's tough to find good people. And that's why I think this is such an important topic. Find and keep good people, I should say. So I'm excited. And what, Brendan, you just got here, but you just got home at 7 this morning?
Just flew in at 7 this morning after a 36-hour travel day. So we're here and I'm excited about this topic. The thing that I've been thinking about, John, is it seems like it's different, right? Like we're talking about culture and HR. Elise is here, HR manager from Gorilla 76. And, it seems like it's a different function of the business, right? We have HR, we have marketing over here, we do sales over here. And really, if you think about it, like a good culture is really just building a good demand gen program for your internal business. I think we're going to get into tactics and strategies that we can use to do that internal marketing piece. I see it as very similar. And there's a lot of things that we're doing on that side of the business that really relates well into that external focus, building demand gen with your customers. So I'm excited to get into this. I'm looking for this topic. Looking forward to Erin hosting this one. So yeah, let's jump into it.
Let's do it.
So the first kind of question I have here to kick us off is, Jon, you talked about your perspective as a business leader, but you also have experience as a marketer. So putting that marketing hat back on, how do you see and Brendan too, how do you see marketing fitting into the culture building equation?
Yeah, I could kind of jump into that first. I think something that we've started to realize is, really it all comes down to messaging and a brand. It comes down to communicating what matters within a company and how it's often driven by core values. And I think it's kind of one of those things, and unless you talk about it, unless you have a focus on it, I'm not saying a good culture can't still exist, but it's just like the marketing we do. That message has to get out there. That story has to be told. And I think just naturally as humans, a lot of times we relate better to something we can identify with, obviously, something that makes sense of part of who we want to be as people and as employers and professionals. So I know this answer is kind of all over the board right here, but to me, it's just all messaging. It's we have messaging tactics to try to go get new business. Why would we not have messaging tactics to go get new people? The number of times I get on a company's website and they've put all this thought into how they're going to move people through the funnel from a new business standpoint, but then you get on their careers page and it's a little paragraph about being an equal opportunity employer, which is very important. I'm not saying that's not important, but then like a link to some external job board, and there's not really any thought put into it. We're not seeing what kind of benefits there are. I'm not able to get on a company's Instagram account to see what the culture is like there. It's just strange to me that we're not focusing more on that messaging. If we don't have people to do the work, it doesn't matter how much work we can do. And obviously attracting that talent is only a part of the equation. You also have to retain those people. And I think that's where you really have to live that message that you're preaching, obviously.
Yeah, John, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's, we talk about customer research when we're building a demand generation program and doing that audience building in the beginning. And you do the same thing here, right? Like you just don't say, oh, today I want to hire a new marketing person. No, you have to like how much is that job title? It's how much it's going to cost, right? You do your initial thing, like go and talk to people, what types of responsibilities they're going to have. So you like figure out the position, but then what kind of company do people want to work at? Right. And I think you guys, when I came here, it's been like a year and a half, and you guys kind of just took hold of that. We're going to be a modern company post COVID, and, we're going to work remote and we're going to treat adults like adults. And not saying like, a lot of manufacturing companies, that's not probably a realistic thing, right? Like we have to build things in factories, but what can you do to highlight that culture? And I think it was just, you guys just talked about it all the time. And that's what excited me about coming here. I've never worked at a company that was like super excited about working there, and it's cool.
Well, I think one of the biggest lessons there, Brendan, is anyone who's connected with me on LinkedIn knows that I preach remote work all the time. That works for a marketing agency. That does not work for a manufacturing agent or company. And I totally get that. And I'm not, it's one of those things that it's not right for everyone. I think if it is right for you, you need to embrace it. What I think the bigger lesson here is that we learned that it was the right thing for us through listening. And I think that's something that Joe and I have grown a lot in as leaders of this company, is our ability to listen. I'm sure anyone who works at Gorilla that's on this call right now will also know there are things we probably don't listen as well to, and we're still working on that. But I remember, so pre-pandemic, just a short little story. Pre-pandemic, we had what we called work from home Wednesdays. Really, it was work from wherever Wednesdays, but essentially on a Wednesday, people could sign on from wherever and do their work. And people loved it. Pandemic hits. We were lucky. We could turn on the switch instantly. We already were familiar with Zoom. We were already, using Slack like crazy. Everything was kind of in place. Fast forward until July, I guess, of 2021, I believe it was. I can't remember. Yeah, 2021, I believe. And the idea was we were going to switch it from work from home Wednesdays to mandatory Mondays, kind of embrace that hybrid model. We were going to have everybody come in on Mondays. What we quickly learned through listening was no one wanted to come in on Mondays. They were open to it and they were willing to do it, but I had a few employees come up to me and say, look, I'll come in, but I'm not productive. All I'm doing is catching up with my coworkers because I haven't seen them. I'm now adding this commute again. I can no longer, I remember one particular employee, he liked to at lunchtime go out and pick his own vegetables from his garden. He was a big time gardener, and use them to make his lunch. And that was really important to him. So he was doing great work. He kind of preferred to just, he was in the writing space, so he kind of needed that quiet and that ability to just kind of hone in. And so we quickly turned that off. So again, I'm not saying everyone here should embrace remote work. We all know it's not possible, especially in the manufacturing space. But I think that the bigger lesson here is we learned. We didn't try to just force everyone back. I mean, we did, and it was like a 2-week experiment, and we quickly went back to the remote kind of setting. And I think that again ties into the core values, which ultimately drive the culture of the company. So, when Joe and I first started, I think we thought culture was what everyone thought: beer fridge, ping pong table, video games in the office. And again, I'm talking about from a marketing standpoint, because that's what all these agencies do. And I think those things are all good and great, but really that core value piece and adhering to that is probably the bigger lesson here. Sorry, I got a little off topic there, but
John, we see the same thing on the demand gen side, right? Like audience research into positioning, into usually like a go-to-market narrative, right? To like create the language around that. And I see that like the Gorilla core values as a key foundational document that you use to build your culture out of. Can you talk about the creation process for those values? And, I think like a mission statement could also go in here, just those things that say like, this is who the company is. Maybe talk about, we use the EOS system and we have that VTO, which is another like piece that sets like, this is who the company is. So you just talk about like your mindset and the creation of those documents.
Yeah. So I admittedly was the guy that anytime anyone brought up core values, I rolled my eyes. I was like, this stuff's dumb, doesn't make sense, no one cares. And I think because for the longest time I had seen it done so executed so poorly, print them on a break room wall, walk by them, cheesy poster, whatever. And what I have learned is
a picture of a bald eagle.
Yeah, a bald eagle with yeah. Determination.
That's right.
But yeah, I saw it done incorrectly. And so I think that was a turnoff. But when Joe and I first went through this process, and it was admittedly the first time we took a stab at EOS, which is a great process. If you guys aren't familiar, and even if you're in a position where you can't really make that type of change at your company, I think just professionally, Gino Wickman's book Traction is just a great read. It's super interesting. And then learning about kind of really all EOS is, the entrepreneurial operating system, is basically creating process for your business. But the first time we did it, we did a light version of it because like everything Joe and I do, we were like, well, we think we could probably do this a little better or a little differently or whatever. We learned the hard way, just follow the process. It works. There's a reason so many companies use it. But in terms of the core value process, I kind of imagined what was going to happen was we were going to sit down and we were going to be like, who do we want to be? And it was actually the complete opposite. It was more of an unearthing and kind of digging and figuring out who we already were. We have 4 core values that were who we already were. In 2020, we added a 5th that was more aspirational because we knew we could be better there. But our core values are results, improvement, relationships, kindness. Those were the 4 that we already were living and breathing and were unearthed in this process. Inclusivity was something that obviously for a variety of reasons in 2020, we all learned the importance of just being more inclusive. And I think we do a good job of that in a lot of ways at Gorilla, but I think there was a lot of room for improvement. So that was the one aspirational core value that we added that it kind of, that was the one that kind of it gave us a challenge to grow, I think. The other 4 are just key components. Anyone who's been involved in our hiring process, there's some people in this room who have even gone through our hiring process, I know. Obviously the ones who work at Gorilla as well. And it's baked into everything from the start. I mean, it's in the questions we ask. It's in the application process, hidden throughout. It's woven into all the copy on the website in terms of how we want to position ourselves. Again, thinking about it from a marketing standpoint, I'm an outdoorsman. I like to fish and I like to hunt. If I'm going to go bass fishing, I need bass tackle, right? I don't want to take my trout fishing tackle to go bass fishing. So whenever you're trying to pursue something, obviously you want to be using You want to have those learnings and that knowledge of how to attract that certain thing. So whether that's a new business or whether that's an employee, if you want somebody that's going to be matching your core values, you need to you need to go out there with the tackle box that is built with those core values included in it, if that makes sense. Sorry, you're going to get fishing and hunting references today. It's just not, there's no way around it.
Yeah.
No worries.
So I like that, John. I think the first thing when I applied at Gorilla, seeing like the questions, tell us how I live up to the Gorilla core values, and like you ask us to write whatever we want in those sections, but that made it feel real to me. I'm also in the Army, and we have 7 values in the Army, and they're kind of like one of those things you kind of just throw up on the wall and you try to live by them. They beat it into your head in basic training, but like it doesn't ever come back. So it's just kind of always there in the background. What I like about how you approach our core values here is you ask about it at the beginning, and then once someone's hired and we're on a team in Slack, we're always high-fiving each other and specifically calling out, this person improved this way, or this person showed results this way, this person was inclusive this way, or demonstrated relationships this way. So when we provide feedback here, we always tie it back into a core value, or for the most part, it gets tied back into a core value, which I think just reinforces those 5 things and keeps it front and center as we're thinking about, working at Gorilla day to day, working with our clients, doing IML, doing marketing in the hiring process. So it's just always, it makes it more top of mind and helps to build those 5 things into that culture and let us build off of that.
Yeah. And you got to be intentional. I mean, I think that's one of however it is for us in a remote setting, we have to be very intentional about giving people those kudos call outs in Slack, because that's not happening anymore in the break room or on a manufacturing floor or whatever. We're remote, so we have to be very intentional about those things. So I think maybe the takeaway here is, whatever your ecosystem is, how can you be more intentional about bringing that to life? Because just like with other marketing, word of mouth is powerful, right? So we have employees that are having a good experience. They go to Glassdoor to write a review. They go to Indeed to write a review. They're posting about the good experience they're having at this company. Well, that's word of mouth. That's just as good as a client saying, "Oh my God, the results we've gotten from this demand gen campaign are amazing." So again, it's just marketing. It's just a different audience is really all it is.
Yeah, that's the core values conversation is a really great way to talk about like how to be successful with, developing a good culture. But Chris had a good question, like about sometimes what barriers prevent us from implementing those core values and culture. So Chris, did you want to come on and expand and ask that question?
Sure. You mentioned, John, that you just don't see it, right? Why is this such a miss for most companies? And I don't think I'm being extreme when I say most companies. So obviously a lot of people are trying to crack this code right now, but what insights have you gotten from working with all these companies?
I think, and again, this is not based on any research. This is just based on my experience. They're falling into the same trap that Joe and I fell into when we started Gorilla. If you would have told me that giving someone a job was going to be one of the hardest parts about running a business, I would have been shocked. I've got money. I've got this job. I've got security. I have insurance. I have all these things that I want to give someone, yet it's hard. So I think learning that it's not something you can just phone in was big for us. Our careers page was bad too. And actually, I think it's not the greatest right now. We're doing a full, letting you guys in on a secret. We're doing a full Gorilla website rebuild right now. And the careers section and the people section is going to be an even bigger focus. Again, Chris, I think it was just for us. It was like, oh, hiring, that's going to be easy, but it was so hard. I mean, hiring's easy, but getting the right people hired is the hard part. And I think that's what has shifted since we've started taking it much more seriously. I mean, we just had a design position open, and at least we don't have to know the exact number, but I know it was well over 175 applications for a design position. So in like 3 weeks. So something that we've started doing is definitely clicking. Are there bad applicants in there? Yes. All you got to do is look at my LinkedIn. I had one guy that, oh my God, I always get one fun one anytime I'm hiring, but I guess to get back to the point, we've just started being, again, much more intentional and again, thinking about how important good people are, how costly turnover is, and that we need to dedicate marketing resources to the hiring and branding of our company and what it's like to work here just as much as we do when we go after new business.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
So I know another big piece about culture is how it impacts like internal communications. And one thing we have in our notes is like a lot of in-house marketers and industrial companies have some type of like in-house marketing role, right? Like maybe you have an internal newsletter that you're in charge of. I wanted to kind of shift the conversation there and talk about how marketing kind of how you kind of have to market internally a little bit when it comes to culture. Brendan, John, did you have any thoughts about that?
I was just going to plug 2 of our clients, see what Todd Imming at the Cordy Company is doing and Luke is doing at MacTech, who I don't know if Luke's on here today or not. I think he's at a trade show, so he might not be, but MacTech and Cordy are both doing a really, really good job. I know one of the coolest things I see when I go to the Cordy Company, which is a large design build construction company in just outside of St. Louis. They've been a client for, gosh, probably since 2009, I guess. But you walk in their space, they have, and this sounds so silly and so simple, but they have t-shirts and hats that people actually want to wear, right? Like they're not the Hanes beefy tee that like gives you a rash when you wear it. They're actually cool wearable clothes. You walk down the halls, Todd has taken, they have beautiful big projects that they do all kinds of cool photography with. He's printed them out poster size. They're hung throughout the building of the company with, they're all have the logo on them. Everything's a consistent brand, but it's just like people want to be part of a winning team, right? Like no one wants to be on the team that's not doing well or it doesn't take pride in themselves. So I think it's like anything else. If you've got a brand that's kind of beat up and you're not consistent, and that's something that anybody that works at Gorilla knows I lose sleep over. Like sometimes we use an Oxford comma, sometimes we don't. Like those little details though. I remember there was a quote that my high school econ teacher had that said countless unseen details are the difference between mediocre and magnificent. And I think when it comes to building a brand, that's so true. People want to feel like they're part of something legit. And I think whenever you take your brand building internally as serious as you do externally, it just makes people want to be a part of it. I think it makes you feel like you're a winner. I don't know, Brendan, what did I miss, or do you have anything to add?
One thing that I appreciate here is clear communication lines, especially from leadership. From Joe and John, it's important that you guys, you're always posting news about the company, right? You're transparent about financials. Like, I don't feel like anything's held back from me just because I'm an employee. And you treat us like adults. And so I think that is important to have it come from leadership. Aaron, I think you're right. Like there might be a place for a marketer to say, hey, I can help with the newsletter, but a lot of that content should be coming from leadership, right? If it's, important company news and stuff like that, bad news is, doesn't get better with time either, right? Like don't keep us in the dark if something bad's happening. So I just I appreciate that as far as internal communication, just people being transparent and, calling out when things are wrong quickly and fixing it quickly. It happens here at Grill. Like we make mistakes and we fix it quick because people are willing to be transparent about it, not like want to hide behind their keyboards. Yep. And we just, you guys have built that in from the start, and it just helps us to feel comfortable where we're working.
Good. I'm glad you feel that way.
I think another thing when we're talking about internal like culture building is the benefits it has to you as a marketer. So I remember when I was in-house at an industrial company, like that transparency and like cross department communication really helped me do my job better, because I knew what was new in engineering and I had a good relationship with engineers, because that's just how our company was built. And that helped me like talk about our products better in our like outward messaging too. I don't know, Brendan, if you had that same experience.
Yeah, I think silos just kill all creativity and momentum on projects, right? Like marketing is going to do their thing, and then engineers are going to do their thing. Mary, I think you and me have talked about this countless times, right? Where engineering is like, we're going to make this really cool product, and then bring marketing in, and at the 11th hour to build a program. It's like, well, that's not really good culture for marketing. And then engineering kind of falls flat because their project doesn't sell well, because marketing wasn't brought in the beginning to bring in customer insights and build out a marketing program in step with the engineering program, right? If those two teams would work together, you have a much better product on the end. So like break those silos down between departments and get people talking. One of my favorite things here is to talk to Nick, our videographer, Alan, the rest of our writing staff, like just to have those. Like, I'm not a very creative person, but we have a lot of creative people here, and so like just having the opportunity to tap into people's brains and letting them have a say in the strategy and how we do things really makes my life a lot better, because I'm not like the end all be all for strategy and creative. Like, Alan's got great ideas, so why wouldn't I break that silo and work with them to get something that's going to work for the client? And it's the same thing, I think, when you're in the manufacturing side.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Welcome, Alan. Your face is right below mine. So yeah.
Well, much appreciated. We like being part of the conversation too. So yeah, thank you for
that. We got a great question in the chat from Salim, and I want to bring him on to ask it. But to kind of preface it, a big part of how we build culture is through like our social presence too. Like if you follow Gorilla, all of our employees are pretty active. And Salim had a good question on that. Do you want to come on and ask?
Of course. Hello, everyone. My name is
Hey,
Salim. Some of my favorite people to follow on LinkedIn are Gorilla 76 employees, especially Mary. Her insight is amazing. Could you talk more about how that program got into place? Yeah. And as a follow-up, could you help sell the idea to a company that sees this as a threat more than something that brings value and attracts talents? I've had multiple awkward conversations in previous companies, and there has been a pattern. I hope you can address how you could sell that.
Yeah, so I don't know that there's any better person to point out than Mary Keogh, because, and Mary, I want to disclose too much. I won't say who you worked for before or whatever, but I believe part of the frustration and maybe one of the reasons you wanted to come to Gorilla was because you had gotten some pushback about posting on LinkedIn. And the best part about Mary is, like, look, Mary and I had to have a couple of conversations where clients would reach out and they're like, dude, she is like throwing our entire marketing program under the bus right now on LinkedIn. And I was like, that's her property and she has the right to do what she wants. And like maybe instead of getting frustrated by it, you should read it and think about it. But Salim, to answer your question, I think, first of all, the bigger thing to think about is it's two biggest channels, at least from the standpoint of this conversation, I think that we're involved in when it comes to social is in terms of culture is our Instagram and our LinkedIn, but they serve two completely different purposes. They're kind of doing the same thing in a few ways, but the strategy is very different. Instagram, we are not trying to provide business advice on Instagram. I'm trying to show what the culture of working at Gorilla is. I'm trying to show the people, and by I mean it's a team. We're trying to show the people, we're trying to show the things that excite us. We're trying to show what kind of stuff we're doing in the community. It's just a place to show pictures. People can scroll. I don't have a big focus on education there. I'm not saying you can't use it that way, but I see a lot of agencies that, and again, I'm talking from an agency perspective, so maybe think about it, how it would apply to in the manufacturing world. But I see a lot of agencies trying to almost in the B2B space, try to get business on Instagram. And again, I'm not saying it's not possible, but I just think for us, it's been a much smarter play to show the culture off. In terms of LinkedIn, I think the biggest thing is it comes back to the core values. When we hire people that, one of our core values is improvement. We also have relationships. I think kindness comes into play here because I don't really like it whenever people get, and LinkedIn is for the most part, it's a pretty safe space, so to speak, but sometimes people throw punches out there. But with LinkedIn, it is not mandatory at Gorilla. I think Joe and I are relatively progressive. Arguably, we lost a really talented employee, Mary Keogh, because of her involvement on LinkedIn. But who am I to try to keep her growth down? If anything, we should be trying to help people as they go on their careers. I was super excited for Mary whenever she got her opportunity, which I can only imagine gets traced back to her LinkedIn work. I like to think that it's like anything else. It's probably like people who are in relationships and are possessive or whatever. It's like the shortcomings actually on your end. Like if I'm scared of Mary being out there on LinkedIn or wherever, then like maybe I need to be creating then she might get being poached. Maybe I should be creating a better workplace. So again, I realize not all business owners think like that. We have a lot of clients that like not clients, but in the past, we've had some clients or people we've worked with that have discouraged their people from being online because they're afraid they're going to get poached. But like, if they're good, they're going to get poached anyway. If you're not providing what you need to on your end. So I guess, sorry, I've been all over the board here, but we just encourage it. I want to see people, again, it ties back to our core values of improvement. If you're trying to write about things, it kind of forces you to learn about them. So it's just a natural dovetail into what we're trying to do at Gorilla anyway. Did that answer the question at all, or did I talk totally around it?
No, great answer. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
It just puts in perspective that it's just, you have to trust people.
Yeah. And sorry, one thing it's all volunteer at Gorilla. No one is forced to do it. I think people have seen the career growth that others have had by participating and by trying to contribute. And so people have naturally wanted to get involved, but there's some folks at Gorilla that are just like, I'm not comfortable doing it. And that's totally fine. But if people want to do it, we want to create the best. We want to give them the resources they need to contribute.
From my side, a personal anecdote here to sell this and put a pin in it. The reason I'm at Gorilla is because of Matt Chanella and Mary posting on LinkedIn. I didn't know about Gorilla before LinkedIn, or before I saw those two posting things like, oh man, they know what they're talking about. And I want to learn from both of those two. And, then I get into the ecosystem, and then you just get the deluge of content from Gorilla. But it's like, oh man, I love what they're putting out. And it's a place that I could see myself growing in. And I think it's worked out for both parties, having Matt and Mary post on LinkedIn and then me joining here. So, it's a way to get your message out there and talk about what your company's all about. And I don't know, how do you expect to grow your business if you're not going to talk about it where people are hanging out?
Yeah.
So it's both for employees and for, opportunities.
That's always tough too. There's that fine line, and I have this conversation with people a lot. They're like, but I just don't want to be the person that's out there like bragging and, and it's kind of I think if you're doing LinkedIn right and you're providing thought leadership, that's not bragging, that's helping. You're showing that you're learning, but even sometimes if you need to share that, your company won an award or whatever, hey, if you don't tell the story, it may never get told. So sometimes you have to be willing to pat yourself on the back a little. I think there's a way to do it where it's classy and is humble and is not kind of that like bro LinkedIn speak that we see so often. And I think for the most part, Gorilla does a pretty good job of that. Maybe there are times where we get a little cocky, but I don't know. Sometimes you got to have a little swag, I guess.
Nice. Well, you already kind of covered off that last point that I was, hoping to hit in this conversation was how culture impacts your external marketing. And Jon kind of covered, you know, how we use LinkedIn versus Instagram and how like social media activity has helped recruit certain employees and like build our brand that way. Do you have anything else to add about how culture has impacted like external marketing and recruitment?
Not necessarily. I think it's just that idea that, again, when you think of the core values of results improvement, relationship, kindness, inclusivity, like if we adhere to all those things, we're going to attract pretty good people. You know, I'll see an application come through and I'll see people who respond to the core value question and they have put thought into it. I mean, they break down the core values, they talk about each one. They're talking about how they're really going to bring their best self to work and how you know, how they're going to contribute. And then I'll see other people provide 2-word answers to each one of those. Well, which person is probably going to be better at building relationships, kindness, is dedicated on improvement? Like, we want thoughtful people. So I think just baked into that hiring process, there's a lot of things where it all just kind of ties together. It's such a cop out of an answer, but it's kind of those things that it is an ecosystem. It all ties together. Another simple thing, and this is kind of related, kind of not, but if there was one thing that everyone could walk away with, it's like, talk to your hiring managers or whoever it is, HR, whatever, and figure out what that hiring process looks like. You know, you want to have good onboarding, you want to have good offboarding, you want to have all those things. But 6 months after someone works there, build it into your process. This is the simplest thing that I see so many companies get wrong. Build it into your process to just send a new employee a note. No obligation, but hey, if you're willing, here's a link to Glassdoor, here's a link to Indeed, whatever platforms make sense in your space. If you're willing to write a review, we always appreciate it about your employment experience. I don't ask people like to write it a certain way. As far as I know, they can tank it. That rarely happens. It's never happened. But what's so nice about that is you build up this big pool of positive reviews of people who are sharing what the culture is like. And then that way, when you have that one person that wants to come in and torpedo things, which is going to happen, it doesn't matter. You could be the best workplace in the world. Someone's going to torpedo because they didn't get the second interview or whatever. Well, you've already got 50, 75 positive reviews built up. Can't tell you the number of companies we'll start working with, or just companies in general. I'll Google search and you see their Google reviews pop up right there. And it's like 2 stars, 3 reviews. They could be the best company in the world, but because they haven't been proactive about doing these things, that's the story that the world sees. This is a 2-star company and these people had a bad experience. So again, going back to that idea of intentionality, just building these processes in, it's so simple. Like, it's probably just another, for us, we use a project management tool called ClickUp. It's one little line item that we add in. You know, after 6 months, send me a reminder to reach out to this person and say, hey, would you consider writing a review for us?
Yeah.
I would like to turn us back onto the marketing side, Jon.
Yeah.
You know, so like we're talking about demand gen, right? A lot of times I see it as, you know, building trust and demonstrating your expertise. And we do that through content a lot of times here, right? Through video and written content. What do you see as effective types of content to help build out that culture story that Gorilla has? I have some ideas, but I want to hear from you first.
Yeah, I think just off the top of my head, I would say for us, it's showcasing anything that ties back to our core values. That's always the litmus test. I think somebody, I think it was Mary posted, I was trying to look at the chat as well as pay attention. But like anytime we had a question or needed a litmus test, it was always like, well, what would the core values drive us to do here? Brendan, I'm sorry, ask it one more time.
Sure. Is there any like specific content on the website or that we've done on you know, social media that you've seen as like this is like good content for culture building, you know, externally, so people can see?
One thing I always try to do is, like, I always tell applicants, you can talk to anyone in our company. You have our team page. You can talk to anyone in the company. We don't hide anyone. In that same vein, and they're taking time to roll out just because cobbler's kids have no shoes, right? Like Nick, our video guy, is only one guy and he only has so much time. And we have client work we have to do. But we're trying to create actual video bios for every single employee. We're working our way through those. We're probably doing one every 2 or 3 months at this point. But that's a great piece of content. Like these people are on camera. They're talking about what it's like to work at Gorilla, what they find value in, et cetera. And like, that's just one little example of something that comes to mind. But what were you thinking?
Yeah,
Brendan?
I think those videos were big for me too. I enjoyed seeing like, who am I going to be working with? I think one of the scariest things about going to a new company is I don't know anybody. I don't like, they look nice on the outside, but it's like, I don't know who any of these people are in real life, especially like at a remote setting. Like I didn't meet you guys until like a year into working at Gorilla.
Yeah.
You know, and so, the videos were cool. The manifesto that we have on the careers page was really big for me. And then we have our employee manual, our handbook, right? Like on an HTML page. So it's super easy to see. Like you can scroll through and look at the benefits and the time off and all, like that's huge. On the application, there's a salary range. You know, it's like we talk about like being transparent with pricing when you're, you know, trying to talk to opportunities and prospects. Well, you know, we're recruiting prospects, right? So like having a salary range on there is huge. I think those are like the biggest things for me on the website that really help put me over the edge of like feeling really comfortable about moving forward in the process with Gorilla.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned those. That kind of got me thinking about 2 others on our careers page. And we're going to dive into this even deeper kind of on the next version of our careers page. But I love when there's a testimonial of whatever sort. And I think it's totally fine to put a name and a quote and whatever, but we just drive people straight to Glassdoor. You want to know what people think about working at Gorilla? Go here. This is a property we cannot control. You are seeing what it's really like. So that's been great. And then another thing, like in kind of the same vein as the handbook, the manifesto, we also, and I think this is what I love so much about, at least always talks about, there's like an inherent goodness about the people that work at Gorilla. But we had, I think it was Alan, actually. I know he wrote it. I believe, but I think he was the champion of it, Alan, correct if I'm wrong, but was like, hey, following good journalistic principles is really important. I want to document what our code of ethics is when we write content, when we do marketing work. And so sharing that, I mean, that again is a piece of the brand. That again shows that like, we really do take this stuff seriously. I'm sure we've had clients in the past that we've frustrated because they wanted to run something, but we're like, guys, we're not here to write promotional content. We're here to write educational content that helps people. And this does not line up with our code of ethics, so we will not do it. I think those are things that indirectly are marketing pieces for the right type of people.
Right.
There's probably gonna be a lot of people that are turned off by that. They want to come in and do the smoke and mirrors and old school Madison Avenue type of stuff. And I mean, that's fine, but that's not who we want at Gorilla.
Yeah, it's like pre-qualifying yourself as a good client there.
Yeah.
Another thing we talk about on demand generation marketing is reporting and analytics. How do you track that on the culture HR side?
Yeah. Oh, well, here, get ready, because there's a little tool I like that I have talked ad nauseum about, and I'm not on their payroll, I swear, but it's called Office Vibe. It's a company out of Montreal. It is employment engagement software. I cannot report how it works for a manufacturing company because you really need, it would work great in the front office or, and if your employees all have email addresses that they check, but essentially what it is, and you can change the settings of it, but it's a once a week survey. We almost always have 100% participation rate. Sometimes if someone's traveling or whatever, they may not get to that week's survey. They're very short surveys. You can probably answer one in 30 seconds. The UX is beautiful, so it's actually fun to take these. This is not like a Survey Monkey type of deal. But over time, it gives me all the metrics. It essentially measures 10 categories, like a dashboard. Things like relationship with peers, relationship with managers, employee net promoter score, all these things. And over time, it gives you a massive data set of how you're doing. I like this because what I see a lot of companies do is the once a year survey. You know, the week they do that, half the time there, it's because of like a best places to work survey. So guess what? Everybody's getting pizza and whatever, you know, Hawaiian shirt day on Friday. We're really going to make everybody excited to work here. And then it's just not accurate data. It's one snapshot in time. I want 52 snapshots over the course of the year of what it's like to work at our company. Anyway, that data has been, oh my God. I mean, I didn't even think about this. I should have showed, I'm happy to always pull back the curtain. If anybody wants to reach out and see what this tool's like, I'll show you how we've used the data. But I mean, we've made termination decisions based on this data because of feedback we're getting of, you know, you're looking at the X and Y axis and all of a sudden you're going like this. And all of a sudden you're also getting anonymous feedback. There's an anonymous portion and there are like major signs that something is broken. Well, we can try to correct it. You can get on the performance improvement plan early, but you also are kind of ahead of it. So you can make those decisions before they become too troublesome and run other people out of the organization. But there are other tools than Office Vibe that offer a similar product. But if I had one tool to use as someone trying to build culture, that would be it.
Great. We're getting close to the end of our time here. There were a couple of good questions that I don't know if we'll have time to answer fully, but we'll probably bring those into Slack. Like, how do you manage a culture when you're remote? I feel like that could be probably its own entire episode, but that was a really good question from Kelly. So I kind of want to transition into our final thoughts. You know, Jon, Brendan, other members of the strategy team, if you had to leave everyone in this conversation with one takeaway, what would it be?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
Listen to your people. I mean, well, I'm going to give you two. Sorry. Listen to your people and actually live your core values. I think if you listen to your people, you're going to be living your core values. So let's just go back to one, live your core values, build them into everything you do, really follow them. And if you did the process right of kind of unearthing them, things are going to go well.
I would say don't complicate it, right? Like, you know how to run demand gen programs. We've been talking about it for a year. So just transition it into culture HR and do the same thing, right? So talk to people, build your foundation, create content, distribute that content, and there you go. That's your culture program.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Real quick, and Kelly, please reach out to me. However, LinkedIn, email me, Jon, Jon at gorilla76.com. Happy to talk about the remote culture building. I would say the simplest thing there is, again, that idea of being intentional. Have channels for people to communicate. I try to reach out to every employee at Gorilla once a week. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's a phone call, sometimes it's a text, sometimes it's a Slack message. We have Office Vibe in place, super intentional with how we use Slack and creating a ton of different channels for fun stuff, work stuff. We have clients involved in it now on certain channels. So, I mean, there's a variety of things, but I'm happy to talk about it for anyone who's wondering.
Nice. Any other gorillas have parting thoughts or takeaways they want to share?
Sure. Hello, everybody. This is Moby. I joined Gorilla about 3 months ago, and the one thing I learned in this process was, even through other interviews, you can't hide or pretend. You can't hide a bad culture, and you can't pretend that you have a good one. Constantly throughout this process, I just had really small but consistent and frequent green flags in the process. And for Gorilla, and then on the other side, I saw small, mini, but frequent red flags in some other companies. It's just, you can't pretend that it's good when it's bad, and you can't hide the fact that it's good at all. It just comes through and it shines through for prospective.
Yeah, like building off that, Moby, it's something that I think a lot of times when it comes to hiring and it can be very dangerous, but I think, you know, as much as we're often told, you got to look beyond just trusting your gut when it comes to hiring and culture. Man, I don't know. I almost want to argue with that sometimes, because when my gut has told me like, I don't know, but we've still done it anyway, it's typically backfired. And once I've talked with everyone after the dust has settled, whatever, they kind of all felt the same way. So you got to be careful. There's a fine line between intuition and anxiety, but like listen to that voice, because something's telling you, and it may be something that it's just some little thing that happened and some life experience in your past has told you like, oh wait, be careful. You know, this little part of me is telling me to watch out for this. Trust your gut.
I was just gonna hop in here and say, I feel like a lot of what we've talked about is at the company level. And it's very difficult to change culture from the bottom up if you aren't, the John of a company, the owner of a company. But what you do have control over if you're a marketing leader is the culture you're creating and fostering within your team. And the culture you're creating specifically around when people make mistakes, risk tolerance, things like that can really affect the end product you're able to produce as a team from a marketing perspective. So all of these lessons are actionable, even if you don't have a direct line to leadership, or like if you're managing anyone, if you have a team, a lot of these same principles can apply.
And that's so good, Grace. And you're gonna screw up. I mean, God, I've worked with Grace since she was an intern. I've screwed up many times trying to manage Grace. The best thing I've learned about managing Grace is don't try to manage Grace.
I thought you were about
Just
to
let
say
Grace
you
do her
screwed
thing.
up so many times.
No. But I mean, no, I screwed up because I used to think you got to rule with an iron fist. You got to and man, I couldn't have been more wrong. Everyone needs to be managed differently. Some people need that iron fist. Some people need the space to just kind of explore and make mistakes. And I had a guest on a podcast recently, which if anyone's interested in more on this topic, we just launched a podcast called The Manufacturing Employer, where I'm just having the culture builders within manufacturing companies come on and talk about what's working, what's not working, et cetera. But his quote was, you have to look at mistakes as tuition. You've paid the price just like you did for a college course. Now you can either skip the rest of those classes, or you can go and learn from the price you've paid and don't make the mistake again. And I think that's such a brilliant way to look at it. We're all going to screw up. We're probably all going to make a mistake today, 2 or 3 of them. Just learn from them. I mean, that's all you can do. And I think that's been the biggest lesson for me in building the culture at Gorilla.
Awesome. Well, those are some great parting thoughts.
I have one more parting thought. Can I add one more? I'm sorry.
Of course,
it's very
John.
short. And Peyton may get mad at me for doing this because she never likes us to try to sell anything. And I'm not selling, but we are hiring 3 positions right now: a strategist, a project manager. Project manager is still a couple weeks out, and a long form writer. So if anyone here knows anyone in the manufacturing space that they think would be a fit, please connect me. That's it. That's the hardest sell you're getting all day. From me.
Nice.
I'll
nice.
allow it.
Yeah. Well, that's a good transition, because we do have a channel in Slack where we, post job opportunities. This is your invitation to join us in Slack. We have a community where we ask questions, give advice, share funny memes, things like that. So if you'd like to join, just let us know in the chat and we'll get you in that community. Our next IML, Peyton will be back, and she would police you, John, if you were, trying to make a hard sell then. But we'll be talking to another member of our team, Grace Halverson. She's a novelist, a manufacturing writer, and she's going to be discussing how to use story effectively in your marketing strategy and build a brand narrative. So really excited for that conversation. But yeah, we'll see you in Slack. Until next time.
Thanks, everyone. It's good to see you.
Thank you.